DIY, helping people assess the correctness of natural language to SQL or NL-to-SQL systems. Consider a car enthusiast asking questions about cars to an NL-to-SQL conversation system. They ask, what is the mean acceleration, minimum horsepower, and maximum displacement among all cars? From the system's response, it is not clear if the superlatives were correctly detected and applied to the intended attributes. Consider another question. Which countries in Europe have more than one car manufacturer? This time, the countries are indeed from Europe, but it is not clear if they are the only ones matching the other criterion. Many systems output a similar response, sometimes along with the generated SQL query. This presents challenges for users who may be familiar with the domain but have little or no experience with SQL to assess the answers for correctness. We present DIY, an interactive technique that helps users debug such NL2SQL scenarios. DIY highlights important keywords in the input question, presents the answer in an intuitive table, and enables a debug view for debugging. In the debug view, users can modify the mappings between the question and the generated SQL query, such as the table and column names. A small but relevant sample of the production database is generated on which they can assess the execution of the generated SQL query. Optionally, they can interact with this sample database to verify the correctness of the corresponding answer. Once satisfied, they can accept their changes to re-execute the SQL on the production database that updates the original answer. Oftentimes, the generated SQL is complex, as is evident from the fact that there are three tables in the sample database. A new view is now visible in the center that logically breaks the generated SQL into small, understandable steps explained using natural language and tabular visualizations. The user scrolls through these steps but does not find anything to be wrong. To confirm their assessment, they insert two new car manufacturers from France in the sample database. This updates the subsequent steps, including the final answer, which now also displays France. With this positive test, they are now more confident of the original answer. It is worth noting that modifying the sample data does not modify the production data. It is a new, smaller database created only for debugging. We believe if a user trusts the system's response on a sample, accessible database, they have more reason to trust the actual answer on the larger, otherwise inaccessible production database. There has been a lot of work in the HCI and database communities to explain system responses using natural language and visualizations. There has also been a recent surge in deep learning-based frameworks that are pushing the boundaries of NL-to-SQL translation. A standard NL-to-SQL pipeline comprises an NL-to-SQL model that receives a database and a natural language question as input, translates this input into a SQL query, and executes it on the database to compute an answer. DIY creates a small but relevant sample of the production database, logically splits the generated SQL into smaller SQLs, and explains their execution on the sample database using natural language and tabular visualizations. DIY also presents the mappings between the input question and the generated SQL as dropdowns. We conducted an exploratory study with 12 participants that revealed insights about different user debugging strategies, such as testing for boundary conditions by modifying, inserting, or deleting values in the sample database. We also identified future research opportunities. One of our participants, for testing purposes, changed the mapping from greater than to less than, even though the former was correct. We believe this idea of modifying the mappings by direct manipulation can be extended to facilitate data exploration, which is otherwise accomplished by paraphrasing. Some of our participants mapped the keyword since to greater than, while others mapped it to greater than or equal to. These ambiguities between conversational and formal language are opportunities for future work. Finally, DIY can be extended to learn or teach SQL by augmenting online tools such as SQL Fiddle with a natural language interface For more information on how the sample database is generated or how the SQL queries are logically broken down, please read our paper. Thank you.